In the words of Cat Williams, all lies will be exposed. Well, we hope that this situation here is not true. Cori Bush is not having a good week. And it's not the first time a similar issue has come up. When Cori was still in office under the Biden administration, she was accused of misusing campaign funds to pay her husband, and her husband was actually a part of her security detail at that time. Now, Cori did come forward and explain herself and how this happened. So we're going to take a look at that first, because now it appears there's another accusation, and that Cori Bush's husband has been indicted for allegedly wiring funds fraudulently. And this involves those PPE funds. Let's go ahead and start with this clip just to take you back when Cori did defend herself about allegations of misspending campaign funds. Check this out.
On Tuesday, Congresswoman Cori Bush of Missouri confirmed that the Department of Justice is investigating her campaign's spending on security services.
I have endured relentless threats to my physical safety and life. As a rank and file member of Congress, I am not entitled to personal protection by the House, and instead have used campaign funds as permissible to retain security services. I have not used any federal tax dollars for personal security services. Any reporting that I have used funds for personal security is simply false.
Representative Bush acknowledged that she retained her husband as part of her security team, saying he has had extensive experience in this area and is able to provide the necessary services at or below a fair market rate. She also accused right-wing opponents of lodging baseless complaints against her and noted that the Independent Office of Congressional Ethics had investigated the matter and unanimously voted to dismiss it. Joining me now is Congresswoman Cori Bush of Missouri. Thank you so much for being here, Congresswoman. Let's talk about this for just a moment. I want to start with the fact that the Independent Congressional Ethics Office cleared this matter. How did it then proceed to an investigation by the DOJ?
So what happened was there is someone who made a complaint. They sent the complaint, I believe it was to the FEC, which that moves really slowly, is what I hear. Mm-hmm. And so because nothing had happened. They didn't see any movement. Right. They decided, and there are articles about it. They decided, well, hey, I want the DOJ, I want House Ethics, I want all of these different entities to investigate now. So they did it at one time. Just asked all of these different, different entities to investigate.
So these agencies are obliging a complaint.
Yes.
Let's talk about your husband. Your husband,
So for those just joining, FYI, this is a flashback of when Cori Bush was accused of misusing campaign funds to pay for her husband as her security detail. And that's important when we get to the accusations that have been released today.
His name is Courtney Merritt's. Yes. He's a military veteran. He's a military veteran. Why was he the choice that you made in terms of your personal security?
So what was happening, there were a lot of issues with us retaining just good staff. Mm-hmm. What was happening? We had, we couldn't pay the big costs for security like some of my colleagues are able to do. Yeah. And so we went with what we could afford. It worked out for a while, but then we started having call offs, people just not showing up to work, people sleeping on the job. Yeah. And so it was very hard for me to have security when it was unreliable. And so what was happening was Courtney would fill in. He would volunteer. And sometimes he would even when he was there and they were working, he would say, hey, you should be standing over here. Right. Hey, you should be doing that. And so he was volunteering a lot of his time. Mm-hmm. And then we had someone who was kind of leading the group, leading the team who could no longer do it. One day just called and said, I won't be back for 3 months. Right. It left me in a position. There was no way I could manage a security team plus the work that I was doing. And so he was able to pick up that slack. And not only was he able to pick it up, he could handle all of it. I mean, he was an air assault soldier in the 101st Airborne. He had already worked for other companies working security, even as a supervisor. So this was in his
wheelhouse. And and obviously he's somebody you trust. I mean, you're someone who has.
So let me pause here for a second. And when this story broke, one of the questions that I had was the timing, right? And a lot of times when you hear accusations come forward, I always question the timing. Like, does the timing fit, right? And I just found it kind of interesting at that time. Out of all the people, all these politicians that have been proven to have misused campaign funds, again, it was reported. So what Cori is saying is that someone looked into it, right? So she was targeted. Someone looked into it. Now, why would they look into it? Remember what was going on during this time, right? I mean, this wasn't that long ago. Remember everything that was happening, whether it was defund the police. Remember at one point, Cori, I think, was the last person of the squad that was still pressing defund the police. Then there was also, of course, after October 7th, she was one of the first people, along with Rashida Tlaib, to come forward to say, no, like what's happening to the Palestinian people is wrong, etc. So just put all these things into perspective, because like I said, she's telling you that it was looked into. Why didn't they look into anybody else? So see, that's why I ask these questions. And I'm asking this question again, because now it appears that Cori Bush, they are now saying that her husband has been indicted and charged with pandemic loan fraud. This was actually from the local news. Let's show this clip here.
Breaking news out of Washington, where former Congresswoman Cori Bush's husband has been indicted on 2 federal counts of wire fraud. According to court documents, Courtney Merritt's filed fraudulent applications seeking pandemic funds, one with the Small Business Administration in 2020 and another 2021 under the Economic Injury Disaster Loan Program. Combined, the DOJ says those applications allowed him to collect more than $20,000 in government funds. U.S. Attorney and former Missouri Republican Party Chair Ed Martin announced the indictment. Breaking news out of Washington.
So let's go to, there's more detail here. And this is from the Washington Post. Husband of former Congresswoman Cori Bush charged with wire fraud. It goes on to say here, the husband of Cori Bush has been charged in connection with more than $20,000 in payments from the pandemic era Paycheck Protection and Economic Injury Disaster Loan programs. That's according to an indictment filed in D.C. federal court on Thursday. It says that Courtney Merritt, who is 46, faces 2 counts of wire fraud for allegedly filing sham applications in 2020 and 2021 with the Small Business Administration, enabling him to collect money aimed at helping struggling businesses make payroll during the pandemic. So let's stop here for a second and again ask ourselves about the timing. Number one, I hope that this is not true. For Cori's sake, I sincerely hope that this is not true, even though it's not her, it's him. But it's really not a good look considering what just happened for her. There's good things happening for her, but I hope that it is not true. Now, this took place during 2020 and 2021. They're talking about those PPE loans that were sent towards small businesses. Remember, you had to fill out an application for that in order to get that help from the government. Now, it's 2025. So when we go back to what Cori said when they came after her before and they said you spent campaign funds, improperly, she said that someone had looked into it. I'm willing to bet someone looked into this too. And I'm asking about the timing. And when you think about the timing, what just happened for Cori Bush, right? Didn't Cori Bush and Jamal Bowman just announce that they signed on with Zateo and that they're doing a show on Zateo? And they've already done like one episode where they talk about, we'll get into a little bit, where they talk about what was happening to them in Congress in regards to AIPAC. That information just came out. So that video isn't that old. So I find it kind of interesting, the timing of it. Now, that's the things I always kind of question. Now, if this is true, then I guess we can say all lies will be exposed. But we don't know if this is true. Just because someone is indicted, that doesn't mean that they are guilty. Let's go on a little bit more here. Again, The indictment was signed by Ed Martin, the interim U.S. attorney for D.C., whom Trump has nominated to serve as the permanent top prosecutor in the nation's capital. The investigation into Merritt's appears to have begun during the Biden administration. An attorney for Merritt's said he plans to plead not guilty. And that's not uncommon for someone to plead not guilty. But the investigation began under the Biden administration. Again, as I said, Cori Bush was one of the first people to come out in support of Gaza. And there's been attacks like ever since. Remember, she was always the last person in the squad still saying defund the police. We look forward to litigating this case in the courtroom. That's coming from Justin Gelfand, and he is from the law firm Mergilus, Gelfand, DeRuzo, and Lamson. According to the indictment, Merritt's repeatedly applied for business loans for a company he said he operated, allegedly misrepresenting his revenue and number of employees and forging supporting documents so he could receive a bigger loan. When one loan was rejected because it was nearly identical to a previous application he submitted, he allegedly applied on behalf of a different business that he claimed he started in 2020. Merritt's allegedly said the new business earned $128,000 in gross income that year, which federal prosecutors say led to him getting a loan of $20,832 that was forgiven by the federal government. Merritt's used the proceeds for his personal benefit and enjoyment. That's according to the prosecutors. Bush, Merritt's wife, served 2 terms in Congress before losing her seat in 2024. She is not mentioned or accused of any wrongdoing in the indictment against her husband. So that's another thing, too, I will say, like I said, I've had my criticism of the squad, but Cori Bush is not indicted here. Cori Bush has not been accused of any wrongdoing with the PPE loans. We'll go on to say here where they talk about how she attracted controversy before, right? To hire her husband Merritt's as a security guard, but the Office of Congressional Ethics dismissed a complaint filed against Bush last fall, alleging that her campaign employment of Merritt's was a violation of federal election law. Bush paid Merritt $60,000 in 2022 and $42,500 in 2023, according to the Federal Elections Commission filings. Goes on to say the Justice Department was investigating Bush for allegedly misusing money intended for members of Congress and candidates to spend on private security. The scope of the investigation and allegations of wrongdoing were not publicly known. Bush addressed the allegations related to her employment of her husband in a statement at the time, emphasizing her need to provide her own security and calling criticism of her use of campaign funds for that purpose frivolous. So, if it is true, then all lies will be exposed. But I sincerely hope that this is not correct. I sincerely hope that he would not have done this, not just because she's his wife, but also he would not have done this because his wife was also a sitting congressperson. So I sincerely hope that this is not the case. But when I talk about questioning the timing, we do have to remember Cori Bush has been coming forward with quite a bit of information, particularly since her and Jamal Bowman have started the show on Zateo. I want to make sure I get to go from here and get to the right part here. Sorry about that, guys. I just didn't. Okay, there we go. This part here. Now, they already had released this video called Ex-Members of Congress Expose AIPAC Tell All. And I want you to hear what Cori Bush said here when they get to the AIPAC part. Listen to this.
You and I, because of our stance, standing up for Palestinians, standing up for the people of Gaza, and standing up for humanity. So let me tell you my introduction to AIPAC. So I was running for office. This was several years before I won. And yeah, I ran more than once. Mm-hmm. I lost a couple of times, but it was just someone in my community coming up to me saying, hey, I want to introduce you to someone, and, they want to talk to you and just want to talk to you about, like, what's your plan, running for office? What are your priorities? You want to do lunch? Yeah, let's do lunch. Go to lunch. And then there's this person who shows up, and now we're talking about something I didn't know we were talking about. So that happened a few times. And then I remember it got heavy. It turned into, well, if you won't say that you stand 100% with Israel, if you keep talking about Palestinian liberation, then you are against the Jewish people. And I was like, how am I against the Jewish people? I love everybody.
That's right.
So do you see what's happening here? So here's the thing. Don't forget that Cori Bush, after she lost her seat, don't forget that Cori Bush said, AIPAC, I'm coming to tear your kingdom down. And part of me wonders, again, this is an accusation. I don't know if this is true. An indictment doesn't mean that you're guilty, right? So they still have to go through the legal process. But part of me wonders if that statement that Cori made there, what if the people who looked into her campaign finances, what if that was AIPAC? What if it was a member of AIPAC? What if it was connected to AIPAC in some way, shape, or form? What if it was like Zionists that looked into that information? You never know. We don't know. I don't know. But it does make you wonder. I'm just asking you to look at the bigger picture. I don't see people trying to do this with other politicians. So why did they look into her? It goes on a little bit more here.
I said I stand up for Jewish people the same way I stand up for Palestinian people. What do you mean? I said, anyway, so, and they took it to totally mean that I was being hateful, because I believe in like equality,
Rights.
I believe in total human rights.
Yeah.
But so I remember right before I entered Congress. So the thing is, what people don't know is I have been speaking up against the occupation, standing in solidarity with our Palestinian brothers and sisters for years, all the way back to 2014, 2015. So this is nothing new. And we kept organizing together. So this was nothing new for me. And so when I was finally elected, so I ran on this as part of my platform, and there was all of these attacks. And actually what happened was right before, I'll take it back to right before I won, my successor put out this really ugly mailer calling me anti-Semitic, darkened my skin. It was a picture of me and Linda Sarsour, together, and just saying that, I was hateful. Yeah. But people were so pissed off about it because they saw it as Islamophobic. And so people poured into my office, just saying like, hey, we need to rise together. We need to stand together. And it helped me in my win. So fast forward months later, right before I was about to enter Congress, right before we were about to be sworn in, I got a message from someone in the community who was one of the ones who, let's do this lunch thing. And then I was, bamboozled and hoodwinked by this conversation. Said, okay, so AIPAC said, and I'm like, what the freak is it? Okay, like why is AIPAC? Why are we talking about AIPAC? I don't even know these folks. AIPAC said to tell you that they know you're not going to change your stance. You're not going to change your position. They got it. They just want you to be silent about it. So just when you go into Congress, just don't talk about it. Because if you do, you are going to have a tumultuous entrance into your tenure in Congress.
That part right there, right? So when we talk about corporate money and electoral politics, when we talk about lobby interest groups, Bernie Sanders with his oligarch tour, I don't hear him calling out AIPAC. In fact, AIPAC has been just recently applauded Bernie Sanders. We'll get to that later. So I'm putting the pieces together here. Someone just said it already in the chat. They said, why aren't they coming after Nancy Pelosi for her insider trading? I wonder why. Look how long it took for them to take down Menendez, who apparently had accusations multiple times. Look how long it took for them to take down Menendez from New Jersey for his corruption. So all I'm asking you guys to do is just look at the bigger picture. Why are they coming after her and they're not coming after others? So I hope it's not true. We'll find out. I'm pretty sure they'll continue discussing the story, but it's not good for Cori because she just joined Zateo. Her and Jamal Bowman just started that show, and now this information comes out. I question the timing. Hey guys, this was a Sabby clip. If you like what you saw, hit that like button and subscribe.